In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to do a 1.0 hook and teaching you the idea and the basics that go into it. In later videos, I will be teaching the 1.5 and the 2.0 hook. First time learning this trick, I would rate it about an 8 or 9 out of 10 difficulty. It is a very hard trick to land your first time. Once you've landed it, you're going to land it a lot more consistently. But getting that first hook is super hard. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of repetition. No amount of advice will be able to get that out of the equation. Hopefully with this video, we'll be able to accelerate that learning process a little bit. So now, let's get into the trick. I'm going to break this video down into 2 parts, the whip and the hook. So let's get started with the whip portion. For the proper whip, you want to pop the yo-yo straight up into the air. You want it to go completely straight, no angle in it. That'll make this trick a lot harder to get down. And after you pop the yo-yo up, you want it to do a whip like a C motion. You want your hand to go underneath the yo-yo. I have the yo-yo dead right now just so that I can demonstrate the whip without the distraction of the yo-yo spinning. My yo-yo hand is going towards the outside of my body and then back in. Outside, back in. Outside, back in. And you can see that whip starting to form underneath the yo-yo right there. This whip is the most important part of the trick. Because if you're doing this whip wrong, nothing else is going to work. So make sure that you have this whip down before moving on to the hook part. So now for the more complicated part. We're going to learn how to actually hit that hook. So first, I'm just going to explain what's going on here. So you see this whip that we made earlier. We're taking that whip, putting it around our finger, taking the loop, it's going over our finger and into the gap of the yo-yo, causing the hook. That is a lot going on, so I'm going to slow it down and just demonstrate it a few times. So now, how do you actually get that to work? Well, I have a few pieces of advice for you. What you first want to do is make sure that your non-yo-yo hand finger is hitting both ends of the loop, not just one. You want the loop to completely go around your finger. Looking at it from the side here, you can see that both ends of the loop are going around my finger. Another tip that I have to help figure this out is to put your finger on the string when you whip and use that finger to help with the momentum of getting the string to go around. That way, you don't have to depend as much on your arm for that C motion. Next is the actual landing part of this trick. Oftentimes, I see landing a hook be very much compared with landing a laceration, which I see the confusion, but it's not that similar. Landing a laceration, you want to keep your hands as level as possible, completely straight with each other so that the yo-yo lands on that string. With a hook, you want to make sure that the yo-yo doesn't land on this string. If it does, chances are the loop isn't going to fully go around because it's too closed. So what you want to do is as the loop is coming around your finger, you want to pull your yo-yo hand back towards yourself. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to put this into slow motion. You want that string to be pulled back approximately 30 to 45 degrees. You don't want it to be like a 90-degree angle. That makes the trick way too hard. But you also don't want it to be too straight, or you might end up in a Brent stole like I just did. And that's a whole nother trick for a whole nother video. So one mistake that I see is people move their hand back too early or too late. So when do you actually want to pull your yo-yo hand back? Well, I like to do it right after I do the whip. Even before the loop touches my hand, I'm already moving my hand back. So now, last part of this video, what are the easiest ways to actually get the loop big enough and move enough to get into the yo-yo? First, whip harder. Always, when in doubt, whip harder. It's kind of an obvious tip. I see a lot of people just barely get the loop around their finger because they're not whipping hard enough and struggling to learn the trick just because they're not whipping with enough strength. And that's also where the finger right here comes in, because that assists in pulling up the string and moving it over to the side. Another thing that I recommend is practicing this with neutral string tension. If you have a lot of string tension and your whip is wrapping up, it's going to have a smaller area to catch the yo-yo. Third, and this trick only works for some people, try whipping it around your wrist. So I don't recommend doing the whole thing over your wrist, but if you do one side of the loop over your finger, one side over your wrist, I find it for the 2.0 hook to be a lot easier. And the same can be said for the 1.0 hook as well. Again, that trick only works for some people. It happened to work for me. I've seen it not work for other people. So take that one with a grain of salt. My last piece of advice, repetition, repetition, repetition. This is a tough trick to learn. The more that you practice it, the more that you do it, the more that you mess around with the timing to figure out what works best for you, the better that you'll get at it. It's a very tough trick to start learning, but I highly recommend learning it as early as possible. And that's going to be the end of this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to try to help you out. If this video helped you, please consider subscribing to see more yo-yo content. And that's going to be it for me for today. Signing off, till next time.